Coming up, the two home teams take care of business in the beginning of the play-in tournament. This is Locked On NBA.
The biggest games, the best performances, expert analysis. You are Locked On Now.
Welcome into Locked On Now, local experts on the biggest stories on the hardwood. I'm your host, Kainani Stevens. Thank you so much for making Locked On Now your first listen every single weekday. Our Locked On NBA hosts are here to recap the two play-in games that have started this postseason for the NBA. We're going to start off with the Nets, who leaned on Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving to get the win at home last night and advance in the playoffs. Now, Locked On Nets talks about the full team effort it took to knock off Cleveland.
Doug Norrie, Locked On Nets, coming at you after the first play-in game of the NBA season, with the Nets taking care of business over the Cleveland Cavaliers at home, 7-8 win, and to go on to face Boston. Brooklyn put together a pretty complete game front to back, but it was on the efficiency of the two superstars. Kyrie Irving, 34 points on 12 of 15 shooting. Kevin Durant adds 25 on 9 of 16, combined for an 80% true shooting percentage in this one. Basically unstoppable. Get massive contributions from Bruce Brown and Nick Claxton as well. Brooklyn looking like a very complete team heading in to the first playoff series against the Boston Celtics. We are going to be breaking down this game and all of what the playoffs have in store for the Brooklyn Nets over on the Locked On Nets podcast.
The Cavs were up against it playing without Jared Allen, but they aren't done yet. They will have another chance against either the Hawks or the Hornets. Locked On Cavs says there's definitely still hope for this team.
Everyone, Evan Damrell here, co-host of Locked On Cavs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, with the Locked On Now takeaway after the Cleveland Cavaliers' Tuesday night play-in loss to the Brooklyn Nets. At first, it seemed like the Cavs were a little overwhelmed by this moment, unless you're Darius Garland. He did make a promise early in the day that he was going to win this game for Cleveland. Unfortunately, kind of tough when you don't have Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving on your side, but seeing Evan Mobley, Garland's young co-star, kind of step up towards the game throughout the game and down the stretch is really encouraging and gives you a lot of hope heading into Friday's game against either the Atlanta Hawks or the Charlotte Hornets. Maybe Jared Allen will be back, and take no shame in this loss, Cleveland fans, because it's not the first time Andre Drummond has kept the Cavs out of the playoffs. Hear about this and more on tomorrow's Locked On Cavs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
The Timberwolves pulled off an impressive comeback against the Clippers, and they did it with a no-show from Karl Anthony Towns in this game. Locked On Wolves breaks down who did step up for Minnesota in the play-in.
Ben Beacon with Locked On Wolves here, and finally, the Timberwolves are in the playoffs again for the second time in 18 years as the Wolves hold on to beat the Clippers, come back to beat the Clippers in an absolute stinker from Karl Anthony Towns, but the headline really should be Anthony Edwards continues his season-long coming-out party, really. 30 points for Ant, a massive fourth quarter. D'Angelo Russell kept the Wolves in it throughout the second, third, and the fourth quarter. After a shaky first, after Karl Anthony Towns got into foul trouble, picked up his fourth in the first half, his fifth in the third quarter, fouled out after just 24 minutes. It was all about D'Lo and Ant down the stretch. A couple of big shots from Malik Beasley, among others. Naz Reid played well in Karl Anthony Towns' stead down the stretch. The Wolves come back to beat the Clippers by 5 after trailing by 6 to start the fourth quarter. And Karl Anthony Towns fouling out with 7 or so minutes to play. Now the Wolves take on the Memphis Grizzlies starting on Saturday. We're going to break it all down on Locked On Wolves tonight on the postgame podcast. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Wolves for all things Timberwolves.
The Clippers wasted a golden opportunity in Mini, but they'll have to recap quick because they're going to take on either the Spurs or Pelicans, and that will be their postseason lives on the line. Locked On Clippers details the loss and what to expect on Friday.
What is going on, Clips fans? Chuck Mockler here, coming at you after the Clippers drop the play-in game in Minnesota. This one 109-104. Honestly, a lot of weird things happened in this game. A woman tried to glue her hand to the floor, which kind of seemed to spell the end for the Clippers. Paul George had 34 points, but it wasn't enough. No other Clippers scored 20. Reggie Jackson had 18 points on 17 shots. The efficiency wasn't really there. Karl Anthony Towns did foul out, but that seemed to hurt the Clippers' strategy, as most of the time we were just going straight at him on the offensive end. Hats off to D'Angelo Russell and Anthony Edwards for taking it to us. It was a tough game of some mental lapses. We got killed on the offensive glass and just yeah, when the other team hits 2 buzzer beaters to end the quarter, sometimes it doesn't feel like things are going to go your way. All we can do is regroup, hope for more Robert Covington and Terrence Mann in the game against the Pels or the Spurs.
That's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Now NBA. Thank you for making Locked On Now your first listen every single weekday. Make sure you check out Locked On NBA and your team's Locked On podcast. I'm Kainani Stevens. This has been Locked On Now.